Alright, it's Halloween. It's one of my favorite times of the year, and what better way to celebrate than to give you a review of a movie that's been out for about a month. Yeah, I think the word is pretty much out on this one, and it's not a good one. The more recent movie, Ouija, isn't doing much better anyway. So, is Annabelle as bad as you've heard? It depends on you. For me, this was not a very effective horror movie, though it was entertaining, and I'll get to why. It's understandable that they would make a prequel to The Conjuring and that they would focus on the scary doll, because a lot of people looked at that movie and said, you could probably make a whole movie about just that doll. Looking at Annabelle, however, I feel that The Conjuring made a smart decision by giving the doll in small doses, because you can easily overdo something like that, and a variety of scares in a movie is good, and this one does have a variety, but a lot of the scares depend upon how scared you are of Annabelle, because for the most part you just see shots of her, close-ups, still shots where you think she's going to move and she doesn't. And that can be highly effective, because if you think that something is going to move or do something and it doesn't, that plays with your mind. That's why it's not a good idea to have a jump scare every 5 seconds. That said, tension comes from anticipating something bad is about to happen and having it not happen, at least not right away. But how do you make the audience feel that something bad is about to happen? You have to show something bad happening. Imagine, and most of you have probably seen the movie Psycho. There isn't much blood and there isn't much action to Psycho. There's only about, I think, 2 murders that happen in the whole movie. Imagine what would happen to Psycho if there wasn't a murder, a single one, until like an hour and a half into the film. Be pretty ineffective. The first big scare happens, I forget how far into it, but still within its first act or so. That's early enough so that the rest of the movie you anticipate something bad is going to happen. In Annabelle, you just look at the shots of the scary doll, and for the most part it doesn't do anything. Most of the scares actually involve the other creatures and demons and ghosts that accompany Annabelle. And that's not a spoiler, by the way. That's pretty much the way it rolled in The Conjuring as well, because they established that it's not really the doll that's possessed. It's a conduit. The problem I have with most of the scares in this movie, I'm not usually one to complain about jump scares if they're used properly, but in this case, they weren't. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but just think about every horror movie you've seen where someone has heard a noise at the door and the person stupidly asks questions like, "Who's there?" And then stupidly goes over to the door. You know something's going to jump out at you, jump out at the person, and then jump out at the camera. And you'll see a shot where the person slowly walks towards the door, and you get a close-up of the door. You get a close-up of the character's face. They reach out to the door, put their hand on the doorknob, turn it slowly at first, and then they can't take it anymore, and they just fling the door open, and nothing's there. And then they look left, and they look right, and then something jumps in their face! And it's a big jump scare, usually accompanied with an orchestra sting. And it's so overused and so hackneyed that I could almost call it right before it happened. That said, if you are really frightened of scary dolls, this is probably going to be very effective. And I say that because during this movie, I watched it with my fiance and her mom. And those 2 people, I kid you not, they are the biggest screamers when it comes to horror movies. And they made the experience well worth it for me, because I was just so entertained about how scared they were of this film. So clearly, there is an audience for this film. Is it for me? No. But did I have a good time? Yes. So do I recommend this film? Well, only if you scream really easily or you got someone with you who also screams really easily. My shortest review yet.